Dearest mother, what other place could be so desolate, with cliffs so steep as this rock? What else so barren, so uncivilized?
Near the middle of the 1st century, a man named Seneca was banished for offending the Roman emperor. He was a living reminder that absolute power could bring absolute ruin, and he was not alone. One man's exile, Seneca wrote, was but a drop in the sea of human upheaval. For in the 1st century, no one was immune from imperial abuse. The emperor's whim was law, and the emperor's law could be harsh, especially under Nero. During his erratic rule, fire would gut the city of Rome. Christians would pay the price, and brutality would sweep the empire. Soon, winds of change would begin to blow. First in the provinces, then in the very heart of the Roman Empire in the 1st century.
In his youth, Claudius set out to write a history. His first public reading was nerve-wracking. At the beginning, a fat man sat down and broke some benches. The audience burst into roars of laughter. Even when the crowd settled, Claudius could not control himself, but kept remembering the incident and dissolving into laughter.
Writing 2,000 years ago, an imperial biographer describes a world ruled by Rome, and Rome ruled by an unlikely man. His name was Claudius. Claudius limped and stuttered, an embarrassment to his imperial family. He lived most of his life in the shadows. He found solace as an amateur scholar, without power or influence. But as the 1st century neared its midpoint, a twist of fate had left Claudius emperor, and his critics amazed. For Claudius took the helm of the world's greatest empire with more confidence than any man since the dynasty began. Claudius expanded Roman territory. To the south, he completed Rome's conquest of North Africa. To the north, he subdued the fiercely independent tribes of Britain. From Turkey to Morocco, from the Red Sea to the North Sea, the many faces of the ancient world had become part of one empire. But Claudius did more than expand the empire. He passed laws protecting sick slaves. He allowed conquered peoples to become citizens, even members of the Senate.
I like Claudius. I find Claudius very winning, not just because of the adversity of his youth, his illness, his limp, his stutter, but when he does come to power, he's truly humane towards slaves. He cares about the peoples of the empire, and he seems to be quite remarkable for a man who had no chance whatever of attaining the imperial throne.
But the tranquil years would soon veer sharply off course, and the empire would confront the ugly face of imperial rule. Despite his power, Claudius was fragile. His life had been plagued by plots and betrayal. Most of his family had been killed by political enemies, and Claudius himself had endured the execution of a disloyal wife. Now, in the year 49, Claudius was seeking a new wife. Roman society mobilized. The rivalry was intense. Many families sought to link their bloodlines with the emperors. While they schemed, Claudius hesitated, and tensions grew. Finally, Claudius made a decision that startled Rome. Writing some years later, a historian named Tacitus explained why. The emperor chose to wed his own niece, a woman of steely resolve and questionable character. Her name was Agrippina.
From this point, the empire was changed. All obeyed a woman. But this was a woman without feminine frivolity. She was openly severe and often arrogant. Agrippina's dominance was almost masculine.
The most tragic thing about Agrippina is that she wrote memoirs, and they have been lost. And I would give anything to hear her side of the story. The frustrating thing about recovering Roman women is that so little from them survives. It may not have been very different from what Roman men would have said about them. But it would be wonderful to hear her rationale for why she did what she did her way.
Agrippina turned her back on Roman ideals of feminine virtue. She seized power directly and used it proudly. Agrippina struck down her rivals, founded a colony in her own name, and reversing her new husband, Tacitus tells us, she secured the pardon of one of his exiles, the writer and philosopher Seneca.
Agrippina did not want to be known only for wicked deeds. So she obtained a pardon for Seneca. She assumed this would please the public because he was a popular author. She also wanted Seneca to tutor her young son.
Her son was Nero, a 12-year-old boy by a previous marriage, and still just a pawn in Agrippina's drive for total control. Another pawn was Seneca, all too eager to leave exile behind him.
Seneca, she believed, would join her plans for supremacy out of gratitude for her favors.
As Seneca returned to the capital's ruthless politics, he faced a stark dilemma. He had always scorned luxury and power, and condemned moral slackness. But Seneca was obliged to Agrippina, and driven by ambition. After languishing for a decade in obscurity, he was drawn to the promise of influence and to the thrill of Rome.
Look around at the huge influx of people, which even a city as large and diverse as Rome can scarcely house. From the whole world they converge. Ambition draws some. Others are compelled by duty. Many thirst for liberal studies. Others crave spectacles. Some put their beauty on sale. Others sell their eloquence. The entire human race has flocked here. A city offering rich returns for both virtues and vices.
Inside the imperial palace, Seneca would encounter far more vice than virtue. For after luring Claudius into marriage, Agrippina had begun to weave an elaborate plot. First, pushing aside Claudius's son, she convinced the emperor to adopt Nero and designate him heir. With the line of succession now clear, Tacitus says, Agrippina's only remaining obstacle was her husband.
Her plans for murder were firm. As she bided her time, waiting for opportunity, Agrippina sought the right poison. A specialist in the field was chosen, and by her skill, a potion prepared. It was delivered to Claudius by the eunuch who served and tasted his food.
Claudius collapsed, teetered on the brink of death, then began to recover. Horrified, Agrippina quickly enlisted the emperor's own physician in her crime. While pretending to help Claudius vomit his tainted food, the doctor put a feather dipped in poison down the emperor's throat. Dangerous crimes, Tacitus commented, bring ample reward. Claudius, the emperor of Rome, was dead. Within hours, the palace gates were thrown open. Agrippina's son was declared emperor, and Seneca was launched on a path that would batter his deepest convictions. The reign of Nero had begun.